Comparative advantage explains why two people, two businesses, or two countries can gain from trade even when one side is better at everything. The idea sounds strange at first, but it is really about opportunity cost. Absolute advantage asks who can produce more. Comparative advantage asks who gives up less by producing one thing instead of another. That difference is the heart of the concept. Absolute advantage versus relative sacrifice can make the surface story look simpler than the real situation. Imagine a lawyer who is also faster at typing than an assistant. The lawyer may have an absolute advantage in typing, but every hour spent typing is an hour not spent on legal work. The assistant may type because the lawyer's opportunity cost is higher. The lawyer and assistant example is often the detail that separates a quick reaction from a wiser response. The same logic applies to countries. A country may be efficient at making both cars and wheat. Another country may be less efficient at both. Trade can still help if each side specializes where its relative sacrifice is lower. Countries specializing shapes what should be checked next. The mistake is thinking trade only helps the weaker side. Comparative advantage says both sides can gain when specialization frees resources for their best relative use. Household task division turns the idea into something practical rather than only theoretical. A simple household example works too. One partner may be better at cooking and cleaning. If cooking saves more time for one person and cleaning saves more time for the other, dividing tasks by comparative advantage can make the household more efficient. Outsourcing payroll deserves attention before the choice becomes harder to reverse. This does not mean people should be trapped in roles forever. Comparative advantage describes a trade-off at a point in time. Skills, technology, preferences, and bargaining power can change. Trade gains can quietly move the cost from the present moment into the future. Specialization creates gains because people stop splitting attention across every task. A bakery that focuses on bread and buys accounting services may operate better than if the baker tries to master tax law at night. Transition costs helps explain why the obvious answer may not be the best answer. Trade then allows each specialist to access what others produce. The baker sells bread and uses the income to buy legal advice, repairs, software, or marketing. Everyone does not need to do everything personally. Resilience versus efficiency gives the situation its real-world weight. The concept also explains outsourcing. A company may outsource payroll not because it cannot do payroll, but because internal time is more valuable elsewhere. The choice depends on cost, quality, control, and risk. Tariffs changing incentives is worth checking when the first explanation feels too neat. Comparative advantage can be misunderstood as a defense of every trade deal. Real trade also involves job losses, adjustment costs, bargaining power, environmental rules, and political choices. The concept explains possible gains, not automatic fairness. Team delegation can decide whether the problem stays small or grows into a pattern. Workers can be hurt when industries shift quickly. A factory closing may make sense on a trade spreadsheet, but the affected workers face real costs. Good policy has to handle retraining, transition support, and regional investment. Career focus keeps the analysis tied to behavior, money, timing, risk, or trust. Another misunderstanding is assuming specialization is always safe. If a country depends too heavily on one export or one supplier, shocks can become dangerous. Efficiency and resilience must be balanced. The cost of doing everything yourself belongs in the decision because it changes what action would help. Prices help reveal comparative advantage. If one place can supply a good at lower relative cost, trade patterns often move in that direction. But prices can also be distorted by subsidies, tariffs, taxes, and unequal rules. Relative value becomes more reliable when it appears more than once. Tariffs change the calculation by raising the cost of imported goods. That may protect some domestic producers, but it can also raise prices for consumers and businesses that use imported inputs. Supplier dependence should be checked before accepting the most comfortable explanation. The personal lesson is useful for careers. You do not need to be the best at everything. Your best economic role may be where your skills, time, and alternatives create the highest relative value. Worker adjustment needs to be connected with the actual consequence. Teams benefit from the same idea. A strong manager may be able to do every task, but the team grows when work is assigned to people whose time is best used there. Delegation is often comparative advantage in practice. Prices as signals keeps the topic grounded in daily life. The key question is always, what am I giving up? Without that question, people confuse talent with wise allocation. Being able to do something does not mean doing it yourself is the best use of time. Specialization and exchange can be found in behavior, documents, timing, or repeated choices. Comparative advantage matters because it turns trade from a competition over who is better into a calculation about relative sacrifice. That makes cooperation possible even when abilities are unequal. Who shares the gains makes the issue easier to name in plain words. The takeaway is that trade works best when specialization creates real gains and the transition costs are handled honestly. Comparative advantage explains the engine of exchange, but people still have to decide how to share the gains and protect those forced to adjust. Comparative advantage can feel strange because the best producer should not always do every task. A skilled designer may be faster at bookkeeping than an assistant, but if design work creates far more value, the designer may gain by giving up the bookkeeping and spending more time designing. A small household example makes the idea easier. One person may be better at both cooking and cleaning, but cooking might save far more money and time for that person than cleaning does. If another person can clean with less sacrifice, splitting the tasks can leave both people better off. The point is not ego, it is the cost of using limited time. The idea is really about opportunity cost. The real cost of a task is what you give up while doing it. A person, business, or country benefits when each side focuses on the work where its sacrifice is lowest, then trades for the rest. The same logic applies to businesses and countries. A company may outsource payroll so its managers can focus on sales, design, or operations. A country may import one product so it can use land, workers, and capital for something it produces with lower sacrifice. The gain comes from arranging effort where it creates the most value. This does not mean specialization is always painless. A town that specializes too narrowly can become vulnerable if demand changes. A country that depends on one export may suffer when prices fall. Comparative advantage explains why trade can create gains, but real life still needs resilience. Comparative advantage changes the question. Instead of asking who is better at everything, it asks who gives up less by doing each task. That is why cooperation can create gains even when one side looks stronger overall.